Welcome to the Masters of Resilience podcast. This show is an exploration of the unseen and unheard stories of adversity that shape the journeys of high performers. These conversations will help you better understand the mindset, habits, and behaviors that empower these exceptional leaders to endure the most challenging moments of their careers and emerge stronger than ever. Your hosts are Ryan Seager and Mark Phillips. Let's dive in to more.
Today we sit down with James Floyd. James is a husband, father of three, combat veteran, speaker, and ultra runner, passionate about inspiring others through faith, leadership, and personal growth. As the host of the Never Finished podcast and a master's student in apologetics and evangelism at Dallas Theological Seminary, he inspires others to live boldly and pursue their God-given purpose. In our conversation, we explore how James's faith and resilient mindset helped him overcome unbelievable childhood trauma, and how he uses challenges and overwhelming obstacles to sharpen his mind and spirit on a regular basis. This was a convicting and inspiring conversation that I know you'll enjoy. Let's dig into more. James, thank you for being here, brother. It has been a privilege to get to know you over the last few months, and I have really appreciated the fast friendship that's growing and just the story that you have to share. So we appreciate you joining the podcast. To kick us off, man, I'd love to dive right into this topic of resilience. You've got so many stories that you could share. We'll get into the background and kind of where you've come from, but is there one particular moment that you think of, or when you reflect on this topic of resilience, is there one moment where you really feel like resilience was at the top of your mind and just an essential attribute to helping you move through the experiences you were going through?
You know, I've had quite a few experiences with that word resilience being at top of mind. And I think, you know, as a child, I was kind of forced to learn through experiences. We talked about that before we press record a little bit. Can you learn resilience, or is it taught through experiences? You know, and I think there's a lot to both, but I've been through quite a hectic year this year, actually. You know, 3 months ago, I buried my dad, and my birth dad, and we had a relationship on and off, and the goal was reconciliation. And as I get into my backstory, my testimony a little bit, you know, what happened was a sudden death. He needed a new lung. He was on oxygen. I never got to see him. He never met my 3 daughters. And suddenly I found out one morning after a morning devotional, I was reading the Word of God, and in Genesis, I wrote the word hope in my notes. And then I read in the New Testament my other reading plan, and I wrote the word hope again. And immediately in my head, I started to get a little bit worried that something would happen to my family. And not 20 minutes later, I received a text, "So sorry about your dad." And I called this person like, what do you mean? What happened? I just found out he died suddenly. His lung couldn't handle a heart murmur. He died quickly, and he's 30 minutes away from me. I wanted to see him. I knew he was on the oxygen. I knew he needed a new lung, but I thought he had like 30 years to live because he was en route to getting a new lung, and I didn't get to see him one last time. But at the funeral, despite, you know, my sadness, I didn't live with regrets because I kept pursuing him. And in the process, I stood up and did this like anointed, like I'm going to open my mouth and see what comes out. Honored my dad, honored people there. But I said, never stop pursuing reconciliation. And just challenge people with that notion. And, you know, it took a lot of resilience to pursue my dad, to bury my dad, and now to process, I'm never going to have all the answers. So if I can, I'll go back into, that was
please.
Most recent, but I'll go back into my childhood a little bit for you guys. I'm one of 7 kids. So I grew up Christian, one of 7, and I have 4 sisters, 2 brothers, and we did homeschool, which meant we didn't do any school. We just played in the woods, had fun. The biggest schooling I did was, I will not hit my sister. Wrote that 1,000 times after I got spanked really hard from my mom. And so That's the most schooling I ever did. But I realized as a 7-year-old wee little lad that I wasn't getting much attention, but the Jesus I was being taught seemed to be the answer. So I got this really spiritual kind of, I want to invite him into my life. So I joined the Jesus family at 7, and I can't remember the specific day, but I remember like it solved a lot of lonely problems for me as a child.
Oof.
And then when I turned 9 years old, something would happen that would just check this faith in Jesus. And it was, I remember it like it was yesterday. My parents sat us down in the living room, and they said, "Hey kids, we have some hard news we're going to share with you guys. We're going to get a divorce." And I was like, wow, like all I saw as a kid was happiness. They loved each other. I didn't see anything that would condone or result in a divorce. So that was really hard for me to understand as a 9-year-old boy. So apparently my dad moved out. I found out later on my dad moved out. I don't remember that. I blacked out the next 3 months because something else would happen that would even check my faith and test it even more. And my mom was athletic. She went for a run every single day. She went for a walk every single day. I mean, that's how she freed her mind. She was very relational. Everybody loved her. I mean, we were poor growing up, but because of my mom's relational ability, we got free medical care.
Nice.
So yeah, it's pretty sweet. But I said, "Mom, hey, can I ride my bike next to you while you run?" She said, "Not today, honey." And these were the last words I'd ever hear her say. And 2 hours go by, and I look out the window and I see my 16-year-old sister, she's the eldest, hugging the UPS driver and crying in his arms. And I, that's once again an example of my mom's relational ability. Like the UPS driver loved us. They loved our family. She loved our mom. He had driven by what was the accident site of my mom. A tree limb had fallen on her and taken her life. And that randomness of a tree limb, the divorce and the tree limb, made me feel like a lost little boy. I was 9 years old processing this. And mind you, processing it with the words from the families gathered and how it was told defines why I race today and why I run today. The guy that was leading the church at the time, they're trying to figure out, what do you do with 7 kids? He was like, hey, when he was telling us the news about my mom, he was like, hey, your mom finished the race. She won. She's made it. She made it to heaven. And man, when I received that news, I laugh when I run ultra marathons to the woods today, but I beelined it as a 9-year-old to the woods and just ran. Somebody followed me, but that's why I run races in her honor today. Just thinking about her, I want to finish strong like she did. So that's a big why to my resilience today of experiencing that loss and that trauma. But quickly, the decision that day was that actually my mom's friends took us all in, all 7 of us kids. They were plastic surgeons in Dunwoody, Georgia here, and they could afford us. And
wow.
It was a godsend. We weren't separated.
Yeah.
We were together.
Wow.
But unfortunately, life at that new house would quickly turn for the worse. As a 10-year-old boy eating Domino's pizza now and real food, I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, I'm in a huge house. This house is massive compared to my shed that I grew up in. We started to be seen and treated differently than their own children. They had 4 of their own, and us 7 came in and kind of seemingly took over their house, took over their lives. We were better at sports than them, and it was just a hard transition. And I understand a lot of why it would be hard for them. But at 10 years old, I was actually sexually abused by one of their children. So now I'm carrying this lostness with a brief glimmer of hope of revitalization and healing, and I'm sexually abused. So it throws me to a whirlwind of confusion. Thankfully, I had the Holy Spirit this whole time telling me, James, this happened to you. Don't do it to your siblings. And a big family, incest is really rampant if you
Gosh.
don't talk about it.
James,
So like
I'm just,
nobody.
man,
Yeah, sorry.
as a
Go
10,
ahead.
no, don't
We can
apologize.
pause.
I'm just blown away. As a 10-year-old to have that connectivity to the Spirit and to, I mean, I was not this attuned to faith or to Jesus at that age. Do you have anything you can attribute that to?
Yeah, I can actually. My mom's prayers.
Wow.
So my mom and I don't know about my dad, but I know my mom prayed for us every day.
Mm,
Still today, us 7 kids are closer than ever.
come on. That's
So
unbelievable.
you who
with
are
all you went
moms and
through.
dads out there, your prayers not only don't ever die, because my mom's prayers are still with us today, holding us, gluing us together. They're incense around the throne room of God. They don't expire. Your prayers are so powerful for your children. So absolutely 1000%. That's the easiest answer I can answer is,
Wow.
as a little boy, I'm only here by the Holy Spirit and seeing what I could see because my mom faithfully prayed for me every single day.
What was her
Yeah.
name, James?
Cynthia Jane Floyd.
Cynthia.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful, man.
Wow. Yeah. So all 3 of my girls share her middle name. They all share the middle name Jane, which means God is gracious. My wife wouldn't let me name the children, but I could at least get the middle name.
You
So.
got yeah, that's enough.
You
That's
get to play a
that'll
role.
suffice. That's good, man. Oh man. All right, so keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt. I mean, share as much as you like. It's an unbelievable story. I want to hear more of it.
Yeah, I think it's going to really help a lot of people. And at 10 years old, going through the sexual abuse, experience of lostness, I now was carrying shame. So since I could not process it with anybody else as an adult, I pushed God way out of the way. I said, God, forget you. Like, you don't exist. If I'm experiencing lostness, if I'm experiencing sexual abuse, like, there's no way you love me. So I went downhill from here, actually. As an 11-year-old, I was trying cigarettes. I was trying pot. I smoked, anything that was in front of me and drank beer. And they sent us all to school. And what I found was I was looking for a new family. And what I started to experience was I got attention from what I did. So I did whatever I got attention for. And it just happened to be drugs and like running away and like acting out. And it made me feel good. I was seen by people. So a good lesson learned there is like, hey man, you are the 5 people you hang out with the most. You're going to do, if you're feeling not feeling valuable, the world's going to make you feel valuable. And if you're not careful, it's going to pull you into a dark hole like it did me. But I just struggled at the house. The next thing that happened, they kicked my older sister out. She was like a second mom to us. She couldn't survive it there. I mean, my mom was our best friend. So she was going through all this garbage and wasn't doing well at that house. They kicked her out and told us, her siblings, like how bad she was. And that was hard on us to lose her. She moved in with my grandparents. And then I started to get at the end of my ropes because the guy that was took us all in, he started to threaten us a little bit. We were forced at one point to call them mom and dad, which didn't work. We were forced to greet him at the door and say, how are you? I love you. I hope your day was good. Their children could punish us and ground us. Every other weekend, we went and saw our grandparents, and they all stayed home to take a break from us. So I'm seeing this as a 12-year-old going, wait, I'm worthless. I'm an issue. I don't need to be here. So 14 years old, I said, hey, I'm going to run away. And I was like, wait. I think I saw like Huck Finn or something, and they were like in the woods, like going down the river. I was like, dude, I want to do that.
That looks awesome.
I want to go have campfires and go with my best friend who happened to be the biggest drug dealer in the county at the time. He was like, yeah, I'll go with you. I was like, this is a terrible idea. I had pots and pans and a knife, and I was going to steal my sister's car at 14 years old and meet him at midnight. But he called the house. We had a corded phone and everything. He called the house at midnight because I got cold feet. I said, I could never leave my siblings. They didn't do anything for me. Like, I'm the older brother. How could I do that to them? And so I got cold feet, didn't do it. He called the house. My plan was foiled.
Oh,
And
man.
the house number 2 dad said, "Hey, man, you're out. You're done."
Oh,
So at the time of this like struggle, my uncle and aunt, my mom's little brother, had mentioned to the parents like, "Hey, we'll take some kids in if you're struggling. We can see like you need some help, and we'd be glad to help." Well, he got his wish. He got a depressed 14-year-old, and then my older brother was thrown in as a package deal. He was 16. So a divine moment happens though on the way out of this house. I'm 14 years old, about to start my third home with a third set of parents without my blood siblings. I only have my older brother with me. My little sister, who's 4 years old, comes running out. "Don't forget to take this with you." And I'm like, get that crap out of my face. She was trying to hand me my Bible. And I denied it. And I arrive at house number 3, depressed and numb to the core. Like I felt like I was the only one on earth living. And I felt like a puppet being strung through a series of trauma, and God was laughing and absent from me. And when I arrived at house number 3, I looked down at my feet and there was the Bible. She stuck it in the car anyway. So I move into my room upstairs. I put my Bible in the closet. You know, the saving grace that year was I was really good at sports and I liked kids, actually. I've had this weird paternal instinct since I was a child. I don't know why. I remember like it was yesterday, I was like maybe 5 years old and I went and saw my mom's like, they put that cold jelly on the belly. And I remember seeing that whole experience and going, hey, that's kind of cool. Look at this life form. But I don't know if that's the reason I was always really kind of paternal or I wanted to have my own family to love people. I don't know. But my uncle and aunt had twin baby boys. So I got to like play with these twin newborns and they took a 14 and 16-year-old teenagers in. Like, I don't know how they did it to this day. They were 28. He was a Gwinnett County cop. She was a nurse practitioner. We got scholarship to go to a private Christian school for sports. Like, it's amazing what they did. But that 6 months, I began to be really depressed and really like, I started to cuss out God. I started to blame him for everything. And I asked a very pivotal question. I said, God, where's my father? Look what you've done. Where's my father? Where's my father? And when I was alone in my room 6 months later in that house, I felt such a heaviness that I began to think about suicide. I began to think about how I could take my life. And as I sat there, heavy, lost, full of shame, something said, hey man, go get the Bible. And I was like, wait, what? There's no answers there. And it's like, no, go get the Bible. I'm like, fine. I open the closet, pissed off. I get the Bible, like brush the dust off. I open it to the New Testament. I don't know where to this day. And I start reading it and I'm crying at this point. I'm like, none of this is making sense. Where's my father? I'm just so sad. And all of a sudden, it's like a hand went on my shoulder and a voice entered the room. And the voice said this, you have a father. I'm your father. I love you and I've always loved you. And one day I'm going to use you for something special. And in that very moment, as a lost, shameful boy, I was found and chosen and seen by the creator of the universe. It was so powerful. It was literally like somebody was in the room giving me a hug and all the chains just broke off and tears of joy exited. And it just started a trajectory of absolute zeal for scripture, for seeing other people. I mean, all of high school, I sat around all the different tables. I wasn't never, a part of the cliques. It was so funny. There's like 50 kids in my high school, but for some reason there was like 19 cliques, like of groups of 4 people. I was like, what? How's that happen? Like, there's that many different personalities. I sat at all the tables and it was a hard journey after that. For sure, because I wasn't allowed back to see my siblings. They were allowed to see me once a year on Christmas. And just to fast forward to a cool redemption part of the story is, well, two parts, 2 conclusions that I think will be very powerful for people is, the house number 2 parents have apologized, and like now there's 18 of us on a group text. We're all texting, and still redemption is there, but reconciliation is happening right now. And the guy that sexually abused me, I called him like 4 or 5 years ago, and just the Holy Spirit prompted me, and I wanted to talk to him. And he's like, "Hey, before I let you go, I want to talk to you about something. Do you remember what happened to us when you were 10?" Because he was the same age, and I was like, "Yeah, I remember." And he was like, "Man, that's been haunting me for 4 years, and I just wanted to say I am so sorry."
Yeah.
So in that moment, reconciliation birthed, and I said, "Hey, man, I already forgave you. Jesus loves you." He wasn't a believer, and it was just a beautiful time of reconciliation. And the second conclusion was, I've been married for 4 years. I had my first daughter. This is like 3 Christmases ago. And the house number 2 parents were like, "Hey, come back to the house and lead or come have Christmas." And I was like, I don't know. That house has some terrible things in it, some probably darkness that I cannot see. And I have a daughter now, I have a wife, sexual abuse happened there, all this pain happened there. And I was like, after praying about it, I decided to go. And when I decided to say yes to it, she asked me, "Can you lead communion?" So in a house that tried to take my life, in a house that tried to destroy me, I raised the blood of Jesus life and did communion in front of 30 people, including my daughter and my wife.
Oh, wow.
And it was a moment that my mind went afterwards, leading it. It was my first time leading communion. And I was like, afterwards, I was like, "God, look what you are doing." So God takes every bit of your trauma and he redeems it powerfully. And if you just stick with him long enough, he redeems it. And what I learned was during that trauma, it wasn't his will for me to go through that, but he was with me every step of the way. He was with me every step of the way. He wasn't like observing it and saying, "You have to go through this to grow strong." You don't have to go through that to understand the love of Jesus. I'm sitting here telling you that he loves you. He sees you. So you don't have to go through trauma to understand that. You can already understand that from what I'm telling you. But I think that's a very important caveat to the story. You don't have to have a story like I have to understand the love of the Father. You don't at all. So that's a brief little testimony that I think is powerful to who I am today.
I'm sure.
Whew, what a
Thank you,
story.
James. Thank you, brother.
Yeah,
Thanks
man.
for sharing that. We were talking before we started recording about this topic of resilience and whether it can be learned or experienced, or does it have to be experienced, I suppose. And you were suggesting that it can be learned. And tell us a little bit more about that. How can someone come to a position of, hardness is coming. Adversity is coming. It's not we're promised that in this life, one way or the other, religious or not, it's going to get really hard at some point.
For sure.
Can someone learn how to be resilient through those moments without having to get to the other side first?
Yeah, such a good question. And it's such a powerful question. And, as we talked about it, as we're thinking about it, I'm like, I think resilience is sort of like muscle fibers. You kind of have to beat them up and then refuel them, and you'll get bigger muscle. I heard a video or saw a video once of like the power of doing things that are hard and make you want to quit. If you stop doing those, you'll lose this muscle of like, that's powerful within us that expands and grows you. So I think it's important to go through circumstances, not necessarily purposefully put yourself in circumstances like you need to do hard things. That's why I do ultra marathons. I want to do one scary hard thing a year, whether it's talking in front of 50 people and you're fearful of public speaking. If you do that, you'll experience and learn resilience if you can make it through to the other side, which I agree with you, Mark. I think as we talk about it and think about it, I don't see how you could learn resilience without really making it to the other side of that hard thing that will come, and that deposit go inside of you for this extra muscle you get. So do a hard thing, get to the other side of it, and do a hard thing again. And also, like you said, Mark, which I agree with, like hard things are going to come no matter what.
Yeah.
But learning it, you can, like, I feel like people who listen into my story or these testimonies get a deposit of resilience to then go out and act out. Like, so now I see that Mark or Ryan has been through XYZ. I can do it too. So in a lot of ways, that's why Scripture says in Revelation, testimonies are powerful, right?
It's osmosis to an extent.
Yeah, it's to an extent, it really is.
It's cool.
That's why I read stories. That's why I read resilient stories. Well, how do you get fired up? Well, watch a YouTube clip or a TikTok clip of these guys just like crushing it, and you're like, wait, me too. I'm gonna go crush it.
Right.
Like my first ultra marathon, some guy said, "Hey, I'm gonna run this race called the Cruel Jewels, 57 miles." I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it too. I didn't train for it, but I got this deposit of resilience from listening to him. And then, of course, I had some resilience to deep it at 2 a.m. in the morning when I wanted to quit.
I feels like there's a story that we need to dig in there, too, for sure, man.
Well, I love it.
Yeah, that's good.
And James, I'd love to get your thoughts on because I think that the role of having some of that adversity early on in your life, I've had elements of that just with the education journey and things, and I know for me, and I have a fraction of some of the adversity that you've just shared, but how important that's been in now that you're a parent of 3 daughters, great marriage, in ministry, a lot of these things, like have it being early on in your life. I think when you put yourself in that hard position, like I find that if I can handle the hard things, I'm just more prepared as days go on. So I'd love to, like, how is that earlier on in your life? How is that dovetailed to now as you're in parenting and marriage and work and ministry, all that kind of stuff?
Almost like how has that benefited me and what has it taught me?
Yeah, I think how, like,
now, and
having it be early on in your life, how do you feel like facing that early? How do you feel like it prepares you for what you're doing today?
Yeah, I love that. No, that's a great question. And it's a both and, okay? So I was forced to grow up and I wasn't ready to grow up. So in a lot of ways, going through that trauma so early on has hurt me today. If I can tell you this right now, if I did not have the common denominator of Jesus in my life, filtering out the triggers that I'm now experiencing as an adult, that trauma I experienced as a child would hurt me. So I had this grounding force of Jesus in my life. And the powerful thing is he's redeeming. So for example, I didn't have attention. I didn't have a good father. I had father figures in and out of my life. And now, like, my kids are everything to me. But also, I need to leave them for a night and not worry about it. So I can't, my rule right now, it really is like, don't leave them for more than a night, just because they're so young. And, God is teaching me these standards, but also, like, what standards am I putting on the girls from my own trauma that I experienced as a kid that are too heavy and too strict? So it's a balance, Ryan. And that's such a beautiful question, because if I was not able to process all this stuff with Jesus and with community, people that I love and know me, that I'm walking through life with every single week. There's a group of guys, 2 guys I've walked through life with for 7 years plus, every other week. And I asked them for feedback, like, hey, is this too strict? What do you think about this? And they'll let me know. So in one way, the trauma has helped me, because now I see straight through, like, no, it's important to spend time with your kids from newborn to 7 years old. It's character development. And actually, if you don't spend intentional time with your daughters, then you're going to miss out on a lot with their growth. For example, right now, I pray 7 days a week specifically for my daughters, for their husbands, for their community, for their school, everything. Monday through Sunday is broken up specifically to intercede on my daughter's behalf. Not only that, my wife, the importance of her, the importance of God first, wife second, family third. Like I feel like the trauma I went through as a kid has said, okay, there's zero excuses, because you have seen the wrong way to do something in multiple different homes in multiple ways. But also I go into things like, Mark, you and I talked about it, the church I worked for, and I see culture and I see people and I see relationships, and I go, oh, I don't know if I could make it that long with you, because I don't have time 2 years later to see you change, because it's like draining me. So there's a lot of pluses and minuses, Ryan, to what I went through and experienced as a kid. And what I realized is, like, I didn't get to be a child. I didn't get to have fun. So as an adult, I hate whenever other adults are like, oh, I'm getting older. Like, it's such a stupid segment. Like, why do you discredit yourself? Like, my knees are breaking. Like, okay, like, why do you this? Like, I hate that. So I always say, like, I'm getting younger and younger every year. I'm trying to become a kid again. Look, this reality of your bones breaking, Mark, I get it. This reality of your ache in your back right now, I understand. But, like, there's no excuse, man. There's no excuse.
So I've as a runner myself, we've got to dig into this ultra experiences that you've had. So how many races have you done that are longer than a marathon?
I've done 2.
Okay. That's more than 99.9% of the world. Tell us a little bit about it. I mean, and I not because I'm a masochist, but I'm pretty curious to hear about the moment of like 2 a.m. where all hope is gone.
Brutal.
All hope is gone, and you got to figure out how to keep going.
Yeah, I had a difficult time at work. This was a hard season at work, and I'm in school full time. I got 2 kids at the time, under 4, and this awesome guy, Carl Streck, who has a 200 employee firm, gave me some good advice for how to manage a team. And I was like, dude, you seem cool. Let me, you want to run a trail race with me? He's like, yeah, I'll do one. How long you thinking? And I was like, 5 miles, maybe 10 miles. He's like, hey, man, I'm signed up for something called the Cruel Jewel. It's 57 miles.
Come on.
And I'm like, I'm in. But this guy is like, he's very humble. He was not like super ripped. And for some reason, I was convinced.
What state is the Cruel Jewel in? Where is this located?
The Blue Ridge Mountains. So It has 14,000 feet of elevation gain. So you're talking uphills. So crazy. I live close to Stone Mountain. It's a little granite rock. It's a mile and a half up. I decided I was going to train for it, but I started to get sick, because obviously now I'm like scared. I'm like, man, can I complete this? I'm super competitive. So I started to get scared, and I was like, this is what I want. Work started to get worse. So everything around me was just collapsing in. And sure enough, after 30 miles a week for like 3 weeks in a row, 4 weeks in a row, I stepped foot on the start line. Here's the cool thing. I asked this other guy who's like me, you want to run this race? He's like, yeah, sure. He just lives to the fullest. Like, he just wants to take the most of every opportunity. He didn't really train either. So we both step on the start line. Carl Streck, the guy that invited me, he follows me on Strava. He looks behind and sees me in the crowd. And I'm like, and he's like, what the
what are you doing here? 30 miles for 3 weeks is not enough.
You're here? Yeah, we saw that on Strava. He's like, dude, you're a joke. So we're going, and I'm like shopping at the aid station, refueling. I know I got to eat every hour and cram food down, salt tablets. I'm peeing like crazy because I'm so nervous. I got a huge hole in my heart. I got 2 dead spots in my brain. Oh, this is a cool part. The night before the race.
That's not a euphemism, I don't think. Did you literally have a hole in your heart?
I have a huge hole in my heart. I had a stroke in infantry school as an infantry officer at 24 years old. Blood clot in my brain, stroked out, no kidding, and passed out in my barracks alone, working on an op order. and nobody took accountability. This is Fort Benning, Georgia. I'm with West Pointers. Like, you don't take accountability, you're a terrible soldier. I'm running to class. I'm like, sir, I don't know what happened. They're like, we're going to kick you out, Floyd. Where the have you been? I'm like, I don't know. Something happened last night. It was crazy. I was going to graduate before Christmas at a grueling infantry school and get my blue cord, but I had a stroke and I had only 6 days left to graduate. And it was like 4 hours of sleep in the woods, and like I had to pass a platoon, and I was like, oh crap. They rushed me to the hospital, find a dead spot in my brain, bleeding in my left thalamus.
Oh my gosh.
I told them my whole right side went numb, but because I said my left leg went numb too, they didn't diagnose me. Thank God. They said, go back to Fort Benning, get an MRI, and we'll go from there. I went back to Fort Benning, did not get an MRI, took an Army physical fitness test the next day. The next day after stroke is the most dangerous because you can re-stroke and die. I missed maxing the PT test out by 1 point. I go 299 out of 300. Didn't count one of my push-ups. Lame. And
Wow.
I go 4 days in the woods. I pass my platoon. It's freezing cold. It's December, 16 degrees. I do 16-mile ruck marches, just grueling. I pass it all. The last 2 weeks of my infantry school are full of medical testing, and I get my blue cord. And 6 years of military training or military career, I tell my testimony, and it climaxes with a combat deployment in Afghanistan where I baptized 2 soldiers in front of ISIS fighters.
Oh my
so
gosh.
God, I've never been a soldier. Like, I had generals above me, but I had the creator of the universe as my general. I was his aide. I've been his employee. So every step of the way, he's been like, dude, you're an idiot, but I got your back. Like, I'm gonna use you. He didn't call me that. I never felt that by God, by the way. Yeah. But he said, I'm gonna use you. I'm gonna keep you in the infantry because I got something for you. But that's when they discovered they put saline in my vein, and the bubbles pass effortlessly between my bottom 2 chambers, and I have a giant hole.
Oh my gosh.
I tried to close it up 3 years ago, another story for another time, but the doctor I'm awake for it. They're in my heart. They're trying to close it up with a piece of metal or mesh. And he goes, your hole's too big. We can't close it up. I'm like, dude, you took pictures of it. Come on. I guess a big fail, isn't it?
It's too big. Come on,
so
man.
It's still there. I'm a holy guy.
I didn't think it was a euphemism, but you're, a hole in my heart. That's that's a literal hole. Okay. So you're running this race with your hole in the heart.
So hydration is very important to me. The cardiologist is like, yeah, I got this wiry cardiologist. He actually gave me a permission slip to go to Ranger School. He didn't know what Ranger School was. So I was trying to go before combat deployment. But anyway, he's like, stay hydrated. So I'm worried about this in the race. So I'm just like crushing hydration. But there's this it's starting to rain, and there's this hard part where you go down this long 3-mile mountain. And I'm like, oh, my knee is shot. My left knee is shot. And my other buddy, freaking jerk, is like, oh, I'm feeling great. Yeah, I'm like, I hate you, man. I freaking hate your guts. And I get to this aid station, and I'm just sitting there. There's another guy sitting on the chair. He's just like passed out, sleeping. And I'm like, oh, okay, I need a minute. And it's 2 a.m. And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of wanting to quit now. This is an interesting emotion. Why do I want to quit? And I grab some Coca-Cola from the aid station. I drink some Coke, swig it back, and I just keep going. And I go right back up that mountain. And the lady was like, oh man, this is the easy part, which it wasn't. There was like 7 miles left. And later that day, by the way, I had to be at church for a meeting. So I crossed the finish line at 7 a.m. in the morning, 23 hours later.
Wow.
And I go to the meeting barefoot because I have blisters, but my pride and ego is just like Hercules. I'm like, I didn't get last place, but 23 hours was miserable. And I started to think like, I just got stretched, man. I just got so stretched.
So when that emotion hit, I mean, you're like, that'd be really nice to just sit down and then just keep sitting. The way you just told that story is you addressed it, you recognized it. And then, I mean, what is it? Prior training? Was it the habit? Was it the mindset? Like, why didn't you sit down?
dude, that's so key. And my competitive spirit awoke.
Yeah.
But I think you said something key, Mark, addressing it. When we get to a moment of quitting, what happens is we don't address it. We just like, ignore it. When we get to that, we ignore it. We think we're weak. We go back to all the things people called us in the past. I didn't have any energy to think about any of that. But all I knew was, I'm going to address this. I'm going to try to drink this Coke and see if it helps. And it happened to help. And obviously, I can't not attribute my buddy being there, Cy Whitfield. So going through this quitting moment with another person, if he's going to keep going, I'm going to keep going. If he quit, there may be another story here. I don't know. But I think community, well, one, addressing it, like you said, that was beautiful. 2, community. But 3, also, is there something that I can get my energy back in? I didn't even have energy to pray. I mean, it was insane. I was hurting. But just what I found too was like one step in front of the other. We try to visualize the finish line, but 57 miles later, it's way too far. Instead, go 1 mile at a time. And if you can't do that, go 1 tree at a time. If you can't do that, go 10 feet at a time. If you can't do that, freaking crawl. And if you can't do crawling, then maybe your why for living is lacking and you don't have a purpose. And you just need to keep rewinding and go, why don't I have a purpose? Why do I keep quitting? Why don't I have any resilience? And a lot of those questions need to be asked to be answered, but nobody's asking those questions. That's what I love about this podcast.
That was good, man.
Let's learn resilience.
That was really good. That was really good.
That's so well said. And I think the purpose statement or the why statement, I think is such an important thing to get clear on that not a lot of people do. And I'd love to, I don't want to totally gloss over some of your story too, James. I know like obviously you articulated some of the hardship growing up till about age 14, which is what most people don't experience in a lifetime. But I'd love to talk a little bit too about just where you went from there. I know there was military involvement too along the way, and then kind of how that's led to what you're doing now. And some of these resilience lessons along the way in those sequences too.
Yeah. So what I've learned through all this is like, man, we have a lot to digest together. And once again, I can take no credit for who I am today. I give it all glory to God. So 7 days a week, I wake up with him and have Bible time. It's a must. Then I have time in nature. Then I believe he's gifted me with like, go try that, take some risk. So he has really just orchestrated this awesome life for me, kind of hip checking me and where I should go. Because to be honest, I'm still working on pride. But this has all led to like, even I think about Afghanistan, being in the Guard, I learned that I was really a terrible soldier. I was a great evangelist and bad soldier. So when God was able to say, hey man, you're doing great by skipping Sunday op orders and meetings and leading church services, but you're an officer. You have an infantry platoon to lead. You don't have any clout or any patches, the Ranger patch, air assault badge. I was like, I got you, bro. So I went to air assault school, got my air assault badge. I signed up for Ranger school, was going there. I went to MLOC instead, mortar school, because the battalion commander was like, build a mortar team, go to combat. I was like, what's a mortar? So I figured going to mortar school was better. Failed by one question. Went back to Fort Stewart, and they still left me as mortar PL, where I'd team up with 10th Group Special Forces and fire over 2,000 rounds towards ISIS. So like, you can't make this stuff up. Like God will place you exactly where you should be, no matter if you fail or succeed. I think what God is looking for is that you just take the next step of faith. Just trust him. Like, I was so bent out of shape that I failed. I mean, dude, it triggered everything. It triggered me as a kid being a failure. It triggered all my past trauma. But because I kept consistently following God and asking him and asking other people who are great mentors like you guys, what can I do? I was led down the right path. And, coming back from Afghanistan, it was really hard to like, God, what do you want me to do? Because I led the church over there, man, and invited Afghan guys who are Muslims to the church. And like, they told me I couldn't talk about Jesus, which I built a church there and baptized people. Like, those decisions were all not James Floyd's strengths. Those decisions were all, God, you're going to give me the strength and equip me with the tools I need if I keep taking the next step and trust that you are going to equip me, and I'm not going to try to control the results. Too often we look at the results and we go, hey, my actions were not good or aren't good, or I'm not good enough. God's like, man, I'm trying to train you and teach you. It's like a heartbeat. A heartbeat is a great symbol, the frequency. There's always going to be ups. There's always going to be downs. If you want a different down in your life, if you want a smoother frequency in your life, then you're going to have to learn the lesson. God loves us too much to let us continue on and handle more capacity and more responsibility without learning that lesson and handling it first. So I just feel like he's taking all this from my life and he's continually teaching me and healing some triggers and healing me and teaching me the value of asking why, teaching me the value of taking the next step forward, teaching me the value of, okay, is there something to learn in this result that happened? Or was this really out of my control? There's things that are really out of your control. And I hate to say this, but God reserves the right to use anybody and anything in your life that he wants. Don't question it. His ways are higher than our ways. We know that. So I've just learned, and I love this phrase. This phrase is so good. Y'all know it. This too shall pass. You're having a bad season? This too shall pass. You're having a good season? This too shall pass. Take what you can learn, especially in the bad seasons, because I don't believe I've learned much in the ups, on the mountaintops. I've learned the most in the valleys. But it's going to pass. And as I've learned now today, my calling more than ever is to do this, is to speak life into people, is to grab relationships and men and people and cultures and just speak life into them. And I'm just learning for the first time. I'm 35. I got 3 girls under 4. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and my value is in valuing other people and valuing cultures and seeing other cultures. So God is still harnessing that. So I still have a lot to learn, a plethora to learn, but that's just it, right? As y'all know, if we don't have this heart of learning, this heart to ask questions, and this heart to keep taking steps forward, we're gonna miss out.
It's always interesting with these podcasts because we don't know who's going to listen to this. We don't know where they're going to be and what's going to be going on in their life. Maybe they have a relationship with Jesus. Maybe they believe something different. Maybe they don't believe anything at all. As you think about habits or behaviors, and as you work with leaders, James, what are some of the frameworks, or I don't know, what are some of the habits? Someone tomorrow says, man, I want to be more resilient. And let's assume they're not coming at it from a faith perspective. Man, what should they be doing? What should they be thinking about?
They should be thinking about Jesus 100%. Faith is the most important aspect of your life. And if you don't, believe in Jesus, that's okay. Like, man, I love you, and Mark loves you, Ryan loves you, like, period. Like, and guess what? You're welcomed in too. I love the picture of a house. The house is under construction. The foundation is the most important part of the house. If you don't focus on the foundation, you're not going to get anywhere. To me, foundation is faith. Here's the good news for if you're like, James, I don't want to believe in Jesus, and this is sacrilegious for me to say, actually. But I believe you're going to image and reflect the Creator anyway, and you can actually grow a strong foundation of resilience by getting in core habits. And some of these core habits are, you are what you eat. You know that phrase. So what are you taking into your home? Our issue today in today's world is we're opening our doors to everything. I was talking to my wife about this yesterday. I said, dude, wouldn't it be cool with AI if I could tell AI to only produce TikTok videos that had to do with motivation, period. Like, I could scroll and only get these awesome pictures and motivation things of motivation for resilience or motivation for not quitting. I think we need to get organized on that, because what happens? We just flip through and let some darkness in, and we wonder why our house stinks. We eat bad. We wonder why our house is weak. We let bad people in, people that don't believe in us, people that are influencing us, and we wonder why our house has cracks. So if you want to have resilience, you need to shut your door to people that are going to let you down. You need to start letting people in that are going to build you up. You need to shut your door to letting crap in, the food you eat, the things you're drinking. Cut that out. And you need to shut your door to evil, plain and simple. The reason why the news exists online, and I don't know if you like the news, I'm sorry if you do, but we turn it on. We turn the news on. You can see it's all garbage. If you just turned it off, they couldn't play it anymore. They would make no more money on advertisements. So in short, the three basic things you can do is start letting healthy things into your life. What you watch, what you listen to, even lyrics. We give ourselves so much discredit. I was that guy 10 years ago, listening to Eminem while I worked out. And I was like, God, I want to love you more. He's like, hey man, change what you're listening to. I'm like, God, but I only listen to the beat. He's like, James, bro,
only listen to the beat.
You're smarter than that, man. And I'm like, you're right, God. So I listened to Proverbs 31 every time I worked out for like 5 years in a row, and it radically changed my life. 10 years later, I've only listened to worship music, and it's radically changed my life. Change what you watch, change what you listen to, change who you're around, and suddenly resilience will start to build. And you're going to start realizing like, oh man, I can actually do this. But the reason why you don't have resilience is because your habits, really your systems, are lacking. You have no systems. You're just following the world.
Man.
Well said.
A good word.
So what are some of those healthy things? What, like specifically music, where you like, give me some like
music.
Specific
like
here's
here's a challenge. Whatever song you're listening to, go print off the lyrics. If it's going to show you, if it's influencing, like now ask this question when you read the lyrics. Is this somebody I want to be when I grow up? You're like, man, it's an innocent country song. Like, my dog died, I had a beer. Like, great. Okay, that's innocent for sure. You can listen to that. But is that really going to build you up to the person you want to become? No, it's not. It's not. Slow down the music, listen to or print out the lyrics, read them, and ask yourself, is this the person I want to become? When you're eating that apple pie and that ice cream for the 17th time in a row, and you have these weight loss goals, I'm serious, these muscle building goals, ask yourself, is this helping me become physically who I want to become? You may have children that want to, like, I get it, you're stressed. When you're stressed, your body craves sugar. There's a reason why we're in a fallen world. Like, sugar's not good. Force yourself to say no to sugar. So what you eat is another one. And then physical activity, movement. If you can just get out and walk every day, you don't have to run an ultra marathon. I promise you. But I promise you this, if you sign up for a race, it's going to force you to actually train for it. So sign up for something. And guess what? If you don't train for it and you try to go crush it, good for you. But it's going to hurt. And you're going to want to actually train for it. So physically, have something that you're going to do every day of the week. And if you can't do it every day, start with 3 days a week. Just 30 minutes for 3 days a week makes you a healthy person, according to cardiac research. Your heart. Just 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But we don't make time for it. So those are some of the things that health-wise you can let in.
That's good. Our friend Jeremy, who we had on recently, he said, be disciplined now or disappointed later. I think that's so well said. It's like, in the moment, just that discipline creates an element of freedom later on.
Good.
Yeah. Amen. Well said.
James, man, we try to keep these under an hour, and I feel like we could go for 3, but I want to kind of start pointing us towards the finish line here. Your story is, man, it's humbling to just hear you share it, but to see the joy that you have in spite of it. And you've been unambiguous about where that comes from. And I'm so appreciative of it and the love that you have for Jesus and just your faith. As you think back to pick a time period, if age 15, age 20, James, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years ago, if there was one piece of advice that you could give yourself at that younger age, what would it be?
Ooh, what a powerful question. Goodness gracious. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could go back to 9 years old. I could go back to 10 years old. And maybe I'll stick with college, because in college I got hurt again mentally, and it distracted me for a little bit for 2 or 3 years. But I would probably tell myself, I would tell myself, this too shall pass. I think we have this misunderstanding that good times and hard times come, and it's abnormal. Once again, this last 4 months has been some of the hardest times of my entire life. I mean, it's been so difficult. So I would just tell myself, like, hey man, this is normal. It's a hard time. Stay here, learn the lesson, so that you don't have to go back to this lesson again when the next hard time comes. So hard times and good times come. And the beauty of these hard times and good times is that God teaches you through every single season. And there's a lesson in all of it if you're just willing to be resilient and grit your teeth and take one more step and learn that lesson. I think that's what I would say.
It's beautiful, man. This too shall pass. I think we have a tendency of expecting good times to extend. I think I get that on the hard, but I think that's really profound on the good side too. Like, we just expect good times to continue on forever, and it's just not how the world works. So learn the lesson.
I don't think we want that either. I don't think we want that.
Right. 100%. So, man, James, this has been such a privilege. Thank you. I feel like we probably need to do another episode down the road, and I'm sure there's stories from the military.
More stories.
There's a lot more in there. But thank you for the candor and the vulnerability here. I'm just so excited to see what our audience gets to experience from this, and just the truth that they get to take away from the stories that you shared. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for engaging with this episode of the Masters of Resilience podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend or colleague. Stay up to date on all the latest episodes and get exclusive resources at mastersofresilience.com. We'll see you next time.